The XFL could be done for good. The MLB switching to different leagues, and a look at what's going on in professional golf. But first, the NFL draft.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zack and Tanner.
So, Tanner, like we said, the NFL draft coming up in a couple of weeks, real soon. News is they're officially going virtual, what we suspected for weeks. But yeah, so the NFL draft will be people in their own individual places. I guess draft participants that got invited are going to be zoomed in so we can see the reactions, but they'll be from home. Kind of like what happens when someone doesn't go to the draft anyway. It's just no one's going to the draft now.
No, yeah, and that's right. And as you said, fully virtual. And I think that's obviously smart. I mean, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, and reason being obviously COVID-19. But you're right. When I see this and people are like, "Oh, well, it's going to go fully virtual," at the same time, I think to myself, but we've seen loads of players who do that from home in all different sports, might I add, but especially in football. So it was no surprise to me that when they said fully virtual and they'll just zoom in different players' reactions, because there is still that excitement for which team they're going to go to. They're going to go to a team that they've been wanting to be on since they were a kid, or even just be in professional football. So a smart move. I think it's going to be really interesting to see on the actual day, which again, for those who don't know, it's April 23rd, which is the day for the draft. And I know I'm excited for it to find out who gets drafted and goes where.
Well, that's day one, right?
Day one, correct? Yes.
Right, because it's the 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I'm curious what will happen. So who was I watching? I was watching a show. Oh, it was the Pat McAfee show, and he was talking, and they were talking about the virtual draft, and they brought up something about how what if Zoom cuts out? I mean, that's a total possibility. And he was talking about a hypothetical drafted number one by the Bengals, and then the Zoom cuts out, and it's not his fault at all. But the internet explodes like, oh, he didn't want to go to the Bengals and all this stuff. But really, the Zoom just cut out. And I mean, that could happen for a number of players. Like, I don't think things will go wrong. I bet they're going to like try to give everyone the best internet connection possible that they can. But yeah, I mean that's you always have a possibility of something going wrong, but there's too much money at stake in the draft. I doubt it will happen. But there'll be there could be some interesting storylines going all virtual, which wouldn't happen if players were there because, well, they just go up on stage and shake the commissioner's hand and then scurry off into the back green room to never be seen again for the rest of the draft. I guess they just go home or something. I don't really know what they do. But
Well, no, like you said, with internet connection. I mean, even with some of the high technology that we have nowadays, something can go wrong. With people using the internet. Or I'll be interested to see how it actually is broadcasted, like actually broadcasted through in terms of when they announce names with certain graphics, when different analysts are going to want to talk about the player and make like comparisons. So I'll be really interested in that as well, like how people with the whole show itself, not just the actual draft participants and the actual players itself, when they get their name called. So I think, again, I'm excited for it. This is kind of an interesting tactic that hopefully won't have to be used ever again, but it's what we have for now. And what we can just hope for is that things go smoothly. And if not, again, we're just in a time where we don't really know what's going on, but I think things will go pretty smooth for the most part.
yeah, another thing I want to mention real quick before we kind of wrap up this segment, and you obviously both give our input on it, but the Steelers GM asking for each team to get 3 extra picks. It's not going to happen. It's 2 weeks out, and the NFL hasn't said anything about his proposal. But I think his head is in the right place, and I think it's the right idea. Because reasoning is totally fair. We couldn't scout as many people, so let us have 3 extra picks. I would just do they tack them on at the end, I guess, or do they disperse them? I don't know how they would do that, but I think giving 3 extra picks actually makes sense because it allows a little bit more room for error with the 3 extra picks. The NFL draft used to be longer than 7 rounds. So it's totally possible for them to tack on 3 rounds. You just give 3 picks to every player. I mean, they can decide where they want to put them, but at the end of the day, it's basically the same. If the 3 extra picks are added in the middle of the draft or the end of the draft, it doesn't really matter. I kind of curious what your thoughts on that are.
No, yeah, I was reading on the story and double checking that last night as well, and I was like, this happened obviously a lot more ago, but I was rereading it, and I thought to myself, it would be interesting, and I like the point that you made for room of error because, it's kind of tough to scout now because, well, you can't scout, but I really think I wish, and maybe they'll make a last second change, even though I think both you and me can agree. Most likely it won't happen unless something completely comes out of the blue and like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to add this. But I like Colbert's mind and where he's going with that, and thinking ahead, not just for his own team, the Steelers, but all teams as well, because it's really tough to just pick a player based off just certain highlights instead of actually seeing them in action. So, and to get some extra players, as you said, kind of wiggle room there. So I hope it goes into place. Like like you, I don't think it's going to happen because just of time. I mean, it's the 11th right now. April 23rd is when it's coming, so not much time to make a decision. So I'm like you. I don't think it's going to happen, but we'll have to see. We'll have to wait if we hear anything else.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap up this segment and be back with the XFL when we return. This is Beyond the Stats.
Back here on Beyond the Stats, I'm Tanner alongside my partner, Zachariah Begley. Zach, the XFL rest of the season has been suspended, obviously due to the coronavirus. And in bigger news, it looks like there's not even, in their second season, there's not even going to be a second season for the XFL. Kind of give me your just initial thoughts on that, both on how the XFL was this year, and then just in general, the fact that it most likely might not happen again for their second season.
Yeah, well, the XFL. First reaction, I'm bummed if this comes to fruition. There's enough time between now and next season that things could change, but it's leading towards not reopening, which I'm bummed about. I mean, the XFL was interesting. Sure, the NFL puts a better football product on the field, but the XFL arguably is better entertainment. I would argue that they did a better job of entertaining people. I mean, thought it was really cool how you could commit a turnover and a reporter would come up in the middle of the game and ask, "How do you feel about turning the ball over like 45 seconds ago?" Like it's just entertaining. I mean, yeah, I don't know, and it gives. I mean, football is interesting to watch on its own, and it adds more. It adds football in the months because the college and NFL season are basically at the same time. So you have this void of no football, and I think the XFL was doing a good job of filling it. Way better than, be honest, way better than the AAF. But yeah, I'm bummed that the XFL could not come back and for next year. Yeah, I really hope they do. To be quite honest, I really hope they do because it's entertaining. Football is okay, but the entertainment is A+, and I want the XFL to come back, to be completely honest.
And one thing that I have thought about as I think with the XFL and seeing some of the highlights, first off, with chances, there were a couple of players that actually had a shot at the NFL whenever they came back with their season. I think also just testing out different things in the XFL that they aren't doing in the NFL, but they're kind of like experiments in terms of, going for certain points or starting at different spots on the field, like different rules in the XFL that kind of made the NFL raise an eyebrow and think to themselves, I wonder what would happen if we implemented that. But something else that I think is important is that it also, for the workers all over the XFL, it's also suspending any day-to-day operations, and that all employees have been laid off. So those poor employees who were kind of counting on that as a job or as an experience of what it's like to be in a football organization, that's tough on their part as well. But I'm like you in terms of entertainment wise, the XFL was very entertaining to watch in all different aspects. So maybe they'll find a way. I'm curious as to why they've already completely thought about not even having their second season, but I'm curious as to what they were thinking through their minds, and not having that second season.
Right. I don't know the revenue margins. Maybe they didn't make enough money and they felt like they weren't going to make enough money. It's so interesting though. I mean, can we please have the XFL back so we could like sure basketball and baseball are great, but and I basketball is my favorite sport just to be completely honest. But I mean the XFL is entertaining and I just enjoy entertainment, especially sports entertainment, and I want more like I want the XFL to exist because it means more sports. Just to be completely honest.
And I'm like you, basketball is my favorite sport to watch. But in terms of XFL plays and just in terms of the players and the overall entertainment of it, hopefully, if it does decide that they won't have a second season, hopefully this won't be the end of the XFL. But only time is going to tell where that takes it. But we'll just have to see, depending on how this whole pandemic turns out. But hopefully, we'll see some more XFL because I think you and me aren't the only ones that really enjoyed that league. So the MLB is considering doing 6 different leagues. We're going to talk more about that. I'm Tanner Camp alongside Zack Begley. This is Beyond the Stats.
Beyond the Stats, it's Zack and Tanner. We're talking about MLB possibly realigning realigning the entire way the league works for only the 2020 season. So I'm going to run down kind of what one of the proposed alignments is, probably the one that's running around the sports world the most, which is realigning into the grapefruit and cactus leagues. So instead of American League, National League, it'd be Grapefruit League, Cactus League, and then the divisions would be north. For the Grapefruit League, be north, south, east, and then for the Cactus League, northeast, west, northwest. So just running through the leagues for the North division of the Grapefruit League would be the Yankees, Phillies, Blue Jays, Tigers, and Pirates. The South would be the Red Sox, Twins, Braves, Tampa Bay Rays, and Orioles. And then for the East, it'd be the Nationals, Astros, which me and Tanner are both convinced they did that one on purpose. The Mets, Cardinals, and Marlins. And then for the Cactus League in the Northeast, it's the Cubs, the Giants, the D-backs, Rockies, and Athletics. The West would be the Dodgers, White Sox, Reds, Indians, and Angels. And then in the Northwest, the Brewers, Padres, Mariners, Rangers, and Royals. I mean, yeah, I think that's actually I like the realignment in a lot of ways. The one thing that hurts me is there's no Cardinals Cubs in the same division. We don't get to see them play like 40 times a year. That's gonna bum me. I love that rivalry.
And I agree. And as you said, the first, like you said, Nationals, Astros, they definitely did that on purpose.
No way they
for
didn't.
good,
No way.
for good. But when I see these leagues, and we kind of talked about this beforehand, one thing I think is just kind of getting a feel for different maybe divisions or different teams, not having just all NL teams or just all AL teams, which I think is smart. They're all pretty fair for the most part. There's not like one league that I think to myself, holy crap, that there's one that like really stands out, like this is completely dominant or this one is really bad. And I think it's fair. I'm like you though, as a Cubs fan. Cubs Cardinals is going to be kind of tough. And as we kind of talk through with this, I also want to say one of the rules that I think is pretty important, and that's that they could still play in 3 of the Major League Baseball parks, which would be at Tropicana, Marlins Park, and Chase Field. And from what I had gathered, those are going to be primarily used for postseason. I believe they're still going to use it in the regular season as well, but the big intention is that those will be the sites for postseason stuff. So there are a lot of rules, and we'll keep talking through with that. But the most important thing to note with this, like Zack had mentioned, is that it's only for the 2020 season. This is not something that would be for the rest of the MLB. This is just for this season in terms of trying to limit travel, limit the distance that players go at. And I really like these rules. I think they can make this work.
So, my next question is: teams that are in the Grapefruit League, is there no cross league play? That's I like I don't know if I haven't seen that. I don't know if you've seen that, but I that's my question. The other question is, do the Marlins, Rays, and Diamondbacks get to use their home fields for regular season? Like, do they get to play their home games in those stadiums, or do they have to play them in their spring training sites? That's what I'm wondering.
No, and I agree. That's a really good question. Obviously, part of it also comes in postseason play, and with the no fans thing, which does in all sports obviously make a huge difference. But with this, there would be no fans throughout the whole season. But I know when I was looking through, I couldn't find anything. I only also looked at one or two different sources, so I didn't get a chance to really look as in depth. But to my knowledge, that's a good question. But I assume that they're going to have to play some games there. I mean, all teams will get a chance to be the home team, but depending, like on the certain baseball parks, it doesn't really matter. There's no true home field advantage unless you are those three teams. So that'll be interesting to see, and if there's going to be anything further developed from that. So I'll be interested in that. And again, as we go through and keep reading as we get closer, if they do make a decision, to find out more about that.
Yeah, I wish we could go see games at Wrigley Field. I mean, being just north of Chicago and you being in Indiana, both Cubs fans, it's going to be tough to not get to see the Cubs in the friendly confines if this is actually what happens. But yeah, I think it will create some interesting baseball. Like the Giants Cubs will be really interesting. I think Cubs Rockies will. Yeah, I think the divisions will be interesting. But yeah, there'll be a couple of rivalries missed, but I think it'll be a-okay, especially the Nationals Astros one. Oh, that's going to be so much fun baseball when that rolls around. All right.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that is very important to note is that the designated hitter would be implemented for all leagues and all teams. And we talked about this, and I'm really curious for your thoughts. That to me, I think is a really smart move, and that's just going to bring really entertaining baseball. So I'm all in for that, but I'm curious as to your thoughts as well, Zach.
Yeah, so I mean, there's been talk about baseball making it a full designated league or a full pitchers league for a long time, and I think this gives if this goes as they're proposing, it would give the MLB a chance to at least test it out, and I think it gives the American League an advantage um in their home parks and the National League an advantage in their home parks. So when they're playing cross league play or in the World Series, whoever's at home has an advantage because, well, I would actually argue gives the National League an advantage all the time because it's easier for them to have someone who can just hit in the designated hitter spot versus the American League who's expected to now use pitchers to hit. And I think it would even out the play a little bit for this season. And it'll be interesting to see what happens if, yeah. But it's yeah, just I think it'll be interesting to kind of test that out. We're gonna wrap this segment up. Be back with a look at the PGA golf schedule going forward when we return. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp alongside my partner, the one, the only Zachariah Begley. So, Zach, an update on some golf on the PGA. Of the four majors that normally happen, three of them will be played on a different date due to the coronavirus. So I'm just going to run you down through them to give you an idea. The PGA Championship, which is normally played in May, will now be on August 6th through the 9th. The U.S. Open, normally played in June, is going to be from September 17th through the 20th. The Ryder Cup looks like that's going to stay the same. Normally, that's played, and it will still be played September 25th through the 27th. And the big one, which originally a lot of people thought this would be canceled, but now will be moved. That's the Masters, which normally played in April for this month, is now going to be November 12th through the 15th. Seeing these days moved and seeing that these major golf championships and some of the biggest events in the sporting world, what are your thoughts on them getting pushed, and what do you think this is going to do for the golfers in general?
Yeah, so all these golf tournaments that were happening, I mean, starting with the Masters this month and then in May and June are going to be pushed way back. The one thing that is the one thing that I can think of mostly is the U.S. Open and the Ryder Cup are only the end of the U.S. Open and the start of the Ryder Cup are only 5 days apart, and that's going to be big because that's two huge golf tournaments like back to not even a week apart from each other. How does that I mean how much? Yeah, like golf tournaments usually are a little bit more spaced out. I'm curious how that will affect Ryder Cup play off of the U.S. Open just because, and will people pull out of the US Open because they feel they have a better chance of winning the Ryder Cup, or pulling out of the Ryder Cup because they feel like they have a better chance of winning the US Open? I don't think that will happen because these are the two of the four biggest PGA tournaments. But yeah. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked uh if it, you know, if it didn't, if anyone pulled out of those tournaments. But I'm curious what will, like, how golf will be played, those, yeah, those two particular tournaments in general.
And I mean, we've seen it. Golfers, there are always tournaments usually every week, and certain golfers perform, certain golfers don't perform, depending on their level and where they're at and how they played in the previous tournament. But as you said, just two major championships played back to back, not even a week apart from each other. It's just crazy to think. One thing that I want to touch on, arguably one, if not the best golfer of all time, Tiger Woods. He even said in an interview at one point that he was ready and his body was good to go for the Masters in April. So I'm curious then, with the next major tournament not even happening until August, I'm curious for his part because he's trying to chase have most wins in a golfing career, and arguably you could say he's one of him and Jack Nicklaus in a tied argument, but a lot of people would even put him at number one. But I was really interested to hear that from him because he's been kind of playing some tournaments, he's been playing at a really high level, and some others he's kind of performed below average and what we're used to seeing from him. But Zach, with that, saying that he was ready for the Masters in April, but that getting pushed all the way to November, what do you think that's a good thing for him, or what do you think are some benefits or negative things to that for Tiger specifically?
So the first tournament not being in August, Tiger specifically, and also most golfers, will probably, it'll do one of two things. It'll either make golf a lot better or a lot worse. Um, I mean, in other sports like basketball and baseball and football and hockey, I mean, you there's a difference between gameplay, between playing in a game and playing in practice and training, and you don't really get the feel of being in game shape until you're playing games. I don't know enough about golf to be like, oh, they're not playing, so I don't know if this will work. But you know, they're gonna keep training. They're gonna keep playing. I think it'll probably end up being okay. And in golf could end up actually having a better product on the field with this weight because they have more time to train. But then also enough time could make people start to overanalyze what they're doing and then get too technical, and then also it'll go one of two ways. Golf will either be way better or way worse, and I mean, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. But I'm guessing I'm kind of leaning towards it's either or of the extremes.
So I know I'll be interested as well, especially that means during that late summer, fall time-ish, maybe bleeding a little bit into the winter. There's going to be a lot of major golf right there, and I'll be really interested to see, again, obviously, with a lot of sports, depending on when this pandemic dies down. Hopefully it does soon. We don't know how long it's going to last, but they've postponed it in the hopes that these dates will happen. I hope that it does. I think my biggest thing is, as a huge Tiger Woods fan, I'd love to see him get that major win, and again, arguably one of the best, not just golfers, but athletes of all time, help keeping him set numerous records that he's already broken.
Yeah, I'm expecting that there'll be a lot of people be um, sitting around in their couches watching golf August through November, almost straight. Be a lot of golf to watch then. Yeah, that's really all we have for you today. We're gonna ask you to check us out on social media at Beyond the Stats. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts at Beyond the Stats, and feel free to rate us and leave feedback on your podcasting website. And then also check us out on YouTube. It's Beyond the Stats. Like, comment, subscribe, anything. Let us know how we're doing. Give us some feedback. Give us some input. Um, whatever you want to do. yeah, so
I'm Tanner Camp again, along with Zachariah Begley. This is Beyond the Stats.